There's a wide variety of horror movie subgenres in Japan. There's the slow burn horror thriller that demands the audience pay attention for the full spooky experience. Then there's the wild and wacky blood fest, full of all sorts of action and dismemberment. And of course, there's the monster movie. Kaiju and little monsters all working against humanity in one way or another. That's just scratching the surface, but it's definitely worth thinking about. I wanted you to get your brain firing on all cylinders before I said what I'm about to say. All of these subgenres have monsters in them. Not every movie ever, but there are examples of each type of movie that features monsters doing monstery stuff. It's easy to default to kaiju when you think of Japanese monsters, but the world is so much more expansive than that. Beasts and brujas, both big and small. So much fun. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 Japanese horror movie monsters. If movie monsters move you, make sure to give our top 5 scary movies playlist a look right over here. Perfect, let's get started. Coming in at number 5, we've got Tekiteki. A lot of Japan's most popular and endearing monsters come from the realm of urban legends. Folk monsters and viral tales tend to stay in people's minds more than something dreamed up in a writer's room. A creature that plays off people's collective fears is always going to be creepy. Plenty of these folk creatures are adapted into movie monsters to keep folks scared and aware. One such folksy freak is Tekiteki. The story goes something like this. While a young woman was waiting for a train, she lost her balance and fell onto the tracks. She wasn't quick enough to hop up to get off before the train rolled through and ended up being cut in half. Nobody helped her, so her ghost stuck around to exact some revenge. Man, a lot of Japanese urban legends take place at train stations, eh? Well, back to the movie part. Tekiteki starts stalking a schoolgirl. The girl wants to find out the origins of the ghost, but doesn't want her to find out before it kills her. Thus begins a pretty classic game of ghostly hide and seek, but with a monster like this, who needs to write a groundbreaking script anyways? The Tekiteki gets its name from the sound it makes while dragging its upper torso around with its arms. No legs required, right? You wouldn't think this thing is too fast, because it's only half a body, but it's actually supernaturally quick. Even running away in your car, or driving away I guess, won't give you enough speed to outrun it. And if you're caught, expect an injury to match her. But you won't come back as a ghost, no, you'll just be torn in half. Coming in at number 4, we've got Onibaba. Moving in a totally different, grounded direction, Onibaba is a stark and simple horror movie. Using almost no special effects, it takes a mask and makes it absolutely terrifying. And the story is believable, especially considering the fact that it's a period piece. Set in the 14th century, we meet an old woman and her daughter-in-law. The old woman's son, who's married to the younger woman, had been fighting in the war, so the two women live together in a hut, barely making it through each day. The little money they do have comes from killing soldiers who cross their paths and then selling their things after dumping the bodies in a pit. A male neighbor returns from the front and tells the duo that the old woman's son has died. After revealing this heartbreaking news, he joins the two women in their killer plot. However, the young woman and the neighbor start getting a little too close, if you know what I mean, driving the old woman up the wall. Soon the woman comes across a Hanya mask. Well, actually she kills a samurai for it, but upon donning this mask, she takes on the appearance and mannerisms of a demon. She uses her newfound scariness to try and keep the young lovers apart to little success. But misfortune plagues the small community now, and the young woman becomes convinced that her older companion is really becoming a demon. Onibaba is a masterclass in making something terrifying with very few elements. The cinematography makes a woman wearing robes and a mask into a brand new beast and forces us to think like the younger woman. Maybe it really is a demon. It's scary because anyone you know and trust could suddenly become a monster. Jealousy, spite, fear, they can all make someone act in new ways you'd never expect. And if you rely on that person, what can you do? Not a traditional monster by any means, but a story worth delving into. Coming in at number 3, we've got Tetsuo, the Iron Man. And in another crazy whiplash change of pace, here is an insanely over-the-top special effects nightmare. Tetsuo the Iron Man is a movie that needs to be seen to be believed. Part experimental film, part industrial soundscape, and part psychosexual body horror, it delivers on many fronts. Just make sure you're well hydrated going in, it might give you a headache otherwise. I'm not sure which monster I want to focus on more, Tetsuo or the metal fetishist. I suppose they kind of come together in the end, so I can just talk about them as one. This movie kicks off with the fetishist doing his best to implant his body with all sorts of rusty parts and metal rods. When these experiments inevitably fail, he runs out into the street and is struck by a car. Instead of helping him or calling the police, the driver decides it's time to make love to his girlfriend, right after moving the fetishist's newly dead body into the woods. Well, now the supernatural stuff starts happening. The driver, also known as the salaryman, starts sprouting metal pieces from his skin. He has dreams involving screeching metal and phallic imagery and an overwhelming sense of doom. Then he grows a drill penis and kills his girlfriend, and he's introduced to visions of the whole world being overtaken by metal, and fights the metal fetishist in a crazy stop-motion chase through the streets, and then finally meshes with that fetishist, becoming an unstoppable juggernaut of metal and flesh, rampaging through the streets, promising to reduce the world to a rusted orb. God, this is a cool movie. And the Iron Man's a wicked monster. I might get disavowed and black booked by a bunch of nerds for saying this, but this is my preferred version of Iron Man. Coming in number 2, we've got Biollante. A cross between a rose, a human, and Godzilla. It doesn't get much crazier than this. In the late 80s, Godzilla creatures were getting pretty creative. Biollante is a perfect example of how far folks were willing to take these ideas. She has 2 forms, one that looks like a giant rose with gnarly teeth, and another that is a huge crocodilian monstrosity complete with tendril-like vines tipped with tiny jaws of their very own. This monster's appearance is terrifying and her destructive powers are ridiculous, but what makes this monster truly fascinating is her backstory. You might be thinking, why would someone crossbreed a human, a rose, and Godzilla? Well, it's actually quite tragic once you know the reason. A father-daughter scientist duo was working on developing a new type of plant hardy enough to survive in a harsh desert environment. They were going to use scavenged Godzilla cells in the development of this vegetation, but their lab was attacked during development, killing the daughter. Wanting to keep his daughter alive in some capacity, the father spliced her cells with a rose bush and kept it as a reminder. However, after a volcanic eruption destroyed some of the roses, he was really worried. In order to prevent the roses from any harm, he added Godzilla cells to make them indestructible, and you can guess what happens from there. Mutations beyond anyone's expectations caused Biollante to grow to mammoth proportions, wailing and screaming and eventually attracting Godzilla. The battle that followed was legendary. Coming in at number 1, we've got Sadako. When you think of modern Japanese horror movies, which image pops into your head most often? A pale woman in white with long dark hair? That's iconic. And it all started with The Ring. Well, the widespread popularity anyways. The tale of a cursed videotape that will kill you after 7 days after watching was a hit, and the woman crawling out of a well and through your TV screen was burned into the collective consciousnesses of moviegoers everywhere. Sadako became a phenomenon, spawning all sorts of Ring movies, knockoffs, and homages. Hell, there's even a Sadako vs. Kayako movie that pits the monsters from The Ring and The Grudge against each other. Do I even need to explain why she tops our list? Hopefully there were some unexpected picks on this list that send you down a totally different rabbit hole than usual. And even if you already knew about all these monsters, maybe it's been a while since you've marathoned some Japanese horror. What'd you think of the list? Do you agree with my picks? Did I miss any important ones? What's the coolest Japanese horror movie monster of all time? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more irrational ones from the top 5 Stephen King horror movie theories. Hillsborough says the best theory I've heard of is Randall Flagg is really the crawling chaos himself, Nyarlathotep. That would make a whole lot of sense now, wouldn't it? King isn't shy about borrowing from Lovecraft after all. Victor Valdez says, I wonder if the company in the short story The Lawnmower Man, which has nothing to do with the film of the same name, also worshipped He Who Walks Behind the Rose. Both stories feature some kind of plant worship of a cult capable of murder, and these days lawns are one of the biggest cultivated plant in the USA. It's funny, so much time, money, and effort put into a crop you can't eat, don't feed anything, and just throw away after a harvest. I wouldn't be surprised. The Lawnmower Man really enjoys that grass, more than we do anyways. Also, I really love the fact that the Lawnmower Man movie is so absolutely shamelessly just exploiting King's name for exposure. Like, how else are you gonna get a bad 90s VR movie off the ground? Emmy Bazinga says Christine is definitely Lightning McQueen's ancestor. Do you think she's proud of him? Stefan Hubner says, is it really necessary to always ask your viewers if they get the simplest of wordplays? Do you think your viewers are morons? Or is that just a way to boost your self-esteem for the clever jokes you make? Hey Hubie, go pound sand, you pretentious knob. And Dennis Bunick says, did you get that sweatshirt at Walmart? It was a thrift store, but maybe it came from Walmart originally, who knows? Before I swallow a bunch of coins and go for an MRI, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more island-based beasts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onibaba is a masterclass in taking something terrifying with very... Onibaba is a masterclass in taking, why am I saying taking every time? There's an M there. Keegan, there's an M. Onibaba is a masterclass in making something terrifying with very few elements. The cinematography makes a woman... I say Sadako. When you think of modern Japanese horror movies, what images pop into your head most often? Actually, before I do anything else, is it Sadako or Sadako from The Grudge? It's Sadako, yeah? Sadako?
Oh, I say everything wrong.
I know. Me too. Alright, well I'll just go with Sadako because there's okay. Sadako. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I swallow a bunch of coins and go for an MRI, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe. Before I